we'll we'll draw your shape together right now. So this is going to be a little different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my square, my rectangle tool. When possible, draw with rectangles. It will make things easier. It will only draw rectangles on a plane, which will make a little more sense later. I'm going to select my tool, and then I'm going to click for a location on one corner, right? And I'm going to drag out my square, and I'm not going to hit any other buttons. I'm taking my hands off the mouse. I want my square to be how big? How big are our little wooden cubes? Bless you. 3/4 of an inch, they're 3/4 inch cubes, right? So if you notice down in the very bottom right side of my screen, it has a dimensions thing. And you can see the dimensions. Right now, I am showing my dimension, my cube at 9 feet 9 and 5/16 of an inch by 10 feet 7 and 9/16 of an inch. I don't want that to be like that. So I'm going to type in the dimensions that I want. And you can do it however you want. I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch, comma, 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, and hit enter. You don't have to move your cursor into that box. You can just start typing. That's called a visual control box. It's right down here in the bottom right corner. Do you guys have that or no? Nobody has that? Oh, that's not good. All right. Let's All right, so what happened now is my cube disappeared, right? I have no cube. It didn't disappear. We're just way far away from it. It's like a tiny little ant now in our whole world. You know, think of SketchUp as being as big as the world, right? It disappeared. So if you hit the little magnifying glass at the bottom with all the arrows, your cube should pop into place. We zoom into that tiny, tiny, tiny little cube that we made. Yay. So far, so good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the push-pull command, and I'm going to pull this thing up, and I'm going to type in. Once I start, I'm going to click and start the pull and type in 3/4 of an inch. And then I should have now a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch cube. And you might take a minute to, I'm going to do this sort of as a demonstration here. There's a couple things that we can do that are pretty handy, I think. Once we have a cube, we want to make copies of the cube, right? So I'm going to do this in a couple ways. Just watch this one as a demo first. I'm going to select my entire cube, and I'm going to grab the move command. So one of the cool things that I like about SketchUp is it doesn't necessarily have all the buttons that AutoCAD and Revit has. I'm not a fan of Revit in the sheer fact that there are 6,000 buttons in Revit that you have to know where they are. The drawback to SketchUp is you have to use some keyboard commands, right? So once I select the move command, I'm going to hit the control key. And once I do that, the control key makes a copy of things, right? So I'm going to copy my cube all over the place, right? So now I have a copy of my cube. Now here's where things get nasty. Let's say that I put that cube in the wrong place, right? So I want to move my cube. I'm going to grab my cube, and I'm going to move it. What's happening? Yeah. The lines are all attached, right? And this is the coolest thing that SketchUp does. You can do some really funny stuff with this, like this. But that's not helping me make my shape, right? That's actually kind of a disaster. So I'm going to get rid of this thing. That is not helpful. What I am going to do is I'm going to take my cube, and I'm going to right-click. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to right-click. And there's two things that I can do. I can make a component, or I can make it a group of objects. I can make the group, I can put all of the pieces in one object as a group, right? So for this exercise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make it a group. So now that it's a group, it's locked up. It closes that geometry together. It's like a block in AutoCAD. Like when you insert a water closet or a shower in AutoCAD or Revit, it's the same thing. So now when I move that cube, I can move the cubes wherever I want to. And if they're in the wrong place, I can just say, oh, man, rats. All right, so I'm going to grab that cube, and this one goes over here, right? Now I can move it around because I've grouped the objects together. Learning how and when it's appropriate to work in groups is super, super important. That will save you down the road later on when you're working. So if I remake, the little block that I had going, it doesn't look anything like this. I'm going to move my cubes. And you want to move from an edge to an edge, right? So if you notice, one of the things that I'm doing is when I move that, I hold down Control. I'm locking onto the corner of my object and moving it to the next corner. And Control from corner to the next corner. So you have to maintain a reference point as you're moving.